Hi, my name's Odalyn. And while my sister popped champagne to celebrate a $700 million inheritance, I was holding our dying mother's hand. She left Vera everything: the house, the vineyard, even the headline. All I got was an old flip phone. No letter, no explanation, just that. But when I turned it on, I didn't find closure. I found her voice. And what she said could bury more than just my sister. It could bring down names that never wanted to be spoken. So I have to ask, what would you do if the last thing your mother ever gave you was the truth everyone else paid to silence? Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening and where from? Because this one, it's not just a story, it's a reckoning. Napa was glowing that evening. The hills shimmered with that kind of golden light only late spring can offer, and the Delmore estate sat like a crown in the middle of it. Music floated out over the vineyard. Soft jazz, expensive. Camera flashes lit up the entrance as guests in silk and satin stepped from Blacktown cars, laughing too loudly, sipping champagne before they even reached the steps. And Vera stood in the middle of it all like she owned the valley. She wore gold, not just any gold, mirror shine, fitted, custom. Her hair was swept up into something regal, her heels clicked like punctuation marks across the flagstone. Every eye was on her as she lifted her glass and announced, "To legacy, mine, at last." Not once did she mention our mother. While Vera toasted herself, I sat 20 minutes away on the edge of a hospice bed. Mom's forehead was hot but not feverish, just the last flicker of a fire burning out. I dabbed gently with a warm cloth, her breathing a slow, painful push against the silence. "Odalyn," the nurse whispered as she passed behind me. "You don't have to stay here every hour." I know. But I stayed. Even when Mom could barely speak, even when she didn't remember if I was her daughter or just another nurse, something in her eyes still knew I wouldn't leave, not like Vera had. The gala invitation sat crumpled in my purse. I hadn't planned to go, but guilt is a strange thing. It wears on you, especially when you're the only one left sitting in a quiet room while the rest of the world celebrates a lie. I left the hospice house just after sundown, pulled into the Delmore driveway under a canopy of string lights and camera flashes. I didn't come to cause trouble. I came because I thought maybe they'd let me say something about Mom. Something small. But the moment Vera saw me, her smile dropped like a curtain. "You shouldn't be here," she said, barely moving her lips. "Not tonight. I just wanted to speak for Mom, 1 minute, that's all." Vera leaned in close, her voice coated in sugar, words sharpened like knives. "Mom left you the only thing you ever deserved: silence." She turned and walked away without another glance. I stood there, stunned. The room hadn't heard her, but it didn't matter. The message stuck like a stain. Still, I moved toward the microphone. The MC hesitated, eyes darting to Vera. She didn't hesitate. 2 security men appeared from nowhere and flanked me like I was some kind of threat. I barely got a word out before one of them placed a hand, too firm, on my shoulder and whispered, "Ma'am, you're disrupting the program." "I'm her daughter," I said, louder than I meant to. "Her daughter." "Not tonight, you're not," Vera said, without even looking back. They walked me out past tables of guests with furrowed brows and murmured guesses. One woman I vaguely recognized from Mom's book club looked at me like I was a story she almost remembered, one she hadn't finished. The air outside was colder than I expected. My breath came out in clouds. The silence hit harder than any of Vera's words. Back home, the nurse was just finishing up. "She slipped in and out," she said softly, nodding toward Mom's room. "Didn't ask for anyone but you. Oh. And she left this. Told me to give it to you if anything changed." She handed me a plain white box, about the size of a paperback. My name was written across the top in Mom's shaky handwriting. Inside, a scratched-up flip phone, ancient-looking. One of those plastic ones with the rubbery keypad and screen no bigger than a matchbox. On top of it, a post-it note, She said it's for your eyes only. I almost laughed. After all that, after being erased from the will, from the party, from my mother's own legacy, I got a burner phone? I tossed it on the kitchen counter and went to check on Mom. She was asleep, peaceful, finally, the kind of sleep that doesn't need a clock anymore. I stayed with her. Hours passed. Sometime after midnight, I wandered back into the kitchen and picked up the phone. Out of habit or curiosity or something I couldn't explain. It was dead, of course. I found an old charger in Mom's desk drawer and plugged it in, then went to make tea. I didn't expect anything. But then a soft chime echoed across the kitchen. The screen blinked. A blue folder icon appeared with one label. Only daughter I froze. And then the screen lit again. One line of text appeared beneath the folder. They've already erased you. The screen blinked again. Only daughter. I tapped it with a shaky thumb, more from instinct than plan. The folder flickered, then paused. A small gray box popped up. Enter password. My stomach tightened. I tried her birthday, then mine. Then combinations, our home address, the hospice nurse's name, the date Dad passed. Nothing worked. I tried once more. Mom's old favorite, dandelion. She always said it looked like hope in disguise. Still wrong. I sat back, the phone warming in my hand. Then a sound cracked through the speaker, grainy, barely audible. I almost dropped it. It was her voice, faint, breathy, like she'd recorded it from the edge of something final. Don't. Let them sign it. It's not final. Not yet. And then silence. I pressed replay, but the message wouldn't come up again. Gone. Just like her. I stayed on the couch the rest of the night, the phone on my lap. Sleep came in fits, my mind running laps around what I'd just heard. Sign what? What wasn't final? The sky outside was still dusky gray when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not in slacks and tailored jackets. 2 men stood at the door, one thin, one broad. Both carried briefcases and polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Ms. Delmore?" the thinner one asked, holding a manila envelope like it was a peace offering. "We're from Belmont and Hartley, representing your sister. May we come in?" I didn't answer right away, just stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table. I noticed how quickly they laid everything out. Documents already open, pens ready. "These are standard," the broader man explained, "just a formal release of claims. Given the will was clear and Ms. Vera is the sole beneficiary, this simply avoids future complications." "I haven't read the will," I said flatly. "Of course," the thinner one nodded, "but the terms are final. This is about closure." Closure. It was the same word the hospice nurse used. It never felt more hollow. I skimmed the first few pages. The language was dense, legal, cold. Then I paused at one line, printed in small italics. "The revised estate plan dated April 17th is deemed void and unenforceable." "Revised?" I asked. "What revision?" The two exchanged a look, too quick to miss. The thin man recovered first. "It's an old version. Nothing actionable." "That's not what I asked." The broader man cleared his throat. "Your mother wasn't in her right mind when she made that change anyway." I looked up sharply. "You said made that change. So she did revise it?" He hesitated. "Well, there were drafts, conversations. Nothing binding." I pushed the papers back toward them. "I won't sign." They both chuckled, the kind of chuckle that wasn't friendly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," the thin one said, already gathering his things. "This was meant to give you a clean exit." "I didn't ask for a clean exit. I asked for the truth." Before they could speak again, I stood. "We're done." They left with clipped goodbyes and muttered annoyance, and I locked the door behind them. I didn't even sit down before my phone buzzed. Vera. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Her voice was syrup, sweet and dangerous. "Odalyn, I heard the lawyers stopped by." "They did." She sighed like I was the difficult child at school again. "This doesn't have to get messy." "It's already messy." "Then don't make it worse." She paused. You've always been the quiet one. Stay that way, it suits you. I'm not 12 anymore, Vera. No, but you're still not someone who knows when to walk away. I didn't respond. Let it go, she said softly. There's nothing in that phone worth ruining the family over. And then she hung up. I stared at the screen. She knew. She knew what Mom left me. I went back to the couch and picked up the flip phone again. Scrolled through every menu, folder, setting. That's when I saw it. A buried app, one I hadn't opened. Looked like a game icon, but when I tapped it, another folder popped up. Audio record Daro 423, legalclause.mp4. I didn't breathe. The icon pulsed once more. I hesitated, then tapped it. A low hiss opened the audio. Static first, then breath. If something happens to me... It was her voice again, my mother's. Check clause 17C. I changed it. I left something for you. Vera doesn't know. I gripped the phone tighter, my pulse quickening. That tone. It wasn't frail. It was deliberate. Focused. She knew what she was saying, knew it might never reach me otherwise. I played it again, and again. Each time, her words landed heavier. Clause 17C. What did it mean? I didn't sleep much that night. Morning came without warning, the kind that seeps into the kitchen blinds while your mind's still sprinting. I poured myself a cup of coffee, let the silence hang, and opened the phone once more. A second pop-up appeared now that the audio had played. Just coordinates. An address in town. Old Garden Bank. A place my mother hadn't visited in years. Or so I thought. I threw on a jacket and left. Driving past the vineyard where Vera held that wretched gala just 2 nights ago made my jaw clench. She was likely still glowing in her new role as the Delmore matriarch. The bank stood quietly on a side street. No cameras, no marble floors, just glass doors that stuck a little when you pulled. I walked up to the teller and gave her my mother's name. When she asked for ID and verification, I slid the printed code from the phone across the desk. She disappeared into the back. 10 minutes later, I was in a private room with a small metal drawer in front of me. Inside was a flash drive, wrapped in a lavender handkerchief that still smelled faintly of my mother's perfume. Beneath it, a sealed envelope with my name in her handwriting. I sat there a while before opening it. The letter began simply, "Odalyn, I should have spoken louder. I should have protected you more." This was the only way I could leave something true. I didn't blink. Didn't breathe. I just read it over and over, tears slipping silently onto my jeans. This wasn't guilt. It wasn't even grief. It was the recognition I'd waited decades to feel, like maybe I hadn't imagined how hard it had been. She had known, all along. I opened the flash drive at home, plugging it into the old laptop I kept for scanning records. A folder blinked open immediately. Contracts, handwritten notes, a scanned copy of a legal will, revised, dated 1 week after the version Vera presented at the gala. Clause 17C was highlighted. In the event that Odalyn Delmore is excluded from all public acknowledgement or estate discussion, this clause restores her position as co-beneficiary. She'd tried to leave me something, a safeguard, but no one ever mentioned this clause. Not the lawyers, not Vera. It had been erased, or buried deep enough no one would find it, unless they knew where to look. And now I had it. Still, I sat back. Something felt unfinished. A heaviness pressed down, like there was more I hadn't seen yet. Sure enough, another file sat at the bottom of the flash drive. Diary week before gala, MP3. I clicked it. Her voice came softer this time, spoken more like a confession than a message. "I didn't want it this way," she whispered. But Vera was relentless. She came every day. She kept saying things like, "Don't you want to leave a legacy?" Or, "Odalyn wouldn't care anyway. She never does." There was a long pause before she continued. "I signed the wrong version. Then I changed it back. Harland helped. He said he'd make sure the right one was filed. But then things moved fast. Too fast." Her breathing grew shaky. Odalyn never wanted anything but the truth. So, I left her that. The recording clicked off. I sat there frozen, replaying her words in my head. Harland? Harland M. That name. It wasn't a stranger. He was Vera's financial consultant for years. Quiet, unassuming, the kind of man who carried file folders and wore gray ties. My eyes drifted back to the screen. One final document sat unopened. It was the revised will. At the bottom, beneath my mother's faded signature, was another. Witness, Harland M. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the desk. So he knew. He had seen her sign it. He had stood right there. And now he was working for Vera. I stared at the screen for a long moment, that signature haunting me like a whisper from a locked room. Harland M. I hadn't seen his name in years, but I knew exactly who he was. My mother's older brother. Uncle Harland used to handle the estate books before Vera's rise to power. Quiet, reserved, always in the background during family gatherings. He had a way of folding his hands like he was hiding something inside them. I used to think it was just shyness. Now, I wasn't so sure. By early afternoon, I was pulling into the long gravel drive of his small cottage off Dry Creek Road. It hadn't changed a bit. Rose bushes grown wild, a wind chime too tangled to sing anymore, and a front door that still stuck halfway open. I knocked once, then again. He opened it slower than I remembered. "Odlin," he said, blinking like I was someone he'd left in a dream years ago. "I need to talk to you," I said, holding up my phone. "It's about Mom." He didn't invite me in, but he stepped aside. That was all the permission I needed. His house smelled like old paper and menthol balm. I sat at the dining table cluttered with unopened mail and crossword books. He sat across from me, hands folded just like always. I opened the file on the screen and turned it toward him. "That's your signature," I said. He didn't deny it. "She asked me to witness it," he murmured. "She said it was important." "And was it?" I pressed. He nodded, slowly. "She said Vera was pushing her, that the lawyers had started showing up before she could decide clearly. She wanted a backup, something that couldn't be touched. She trusted you." "I know." His voice cracked a little. "And yet you didn't say a word when they read the other will." He rubbed his temple. "You think I didn't want to?" "I was going to." But then Vera's team showed up. A man named Daryl from the firm. Said it was better for everyone if we let things go. That your mother had changed her mind again. "Did she?" He looked down. "No, I don't think so." Silence stretched across the table like a judgment. He stood, went to the hallway, and returned with a manila folder. Inside, a copy of the envelope my mother had used, dated, sealed, addressed to her own name, and marked personal. He laid it in front of me. "I kept it, just in case." "Because you knew it wasn't right," I said. He didn't respond. I leaned back. My stomach felt knotted, like I was about to be sick. "You were there, Harland. You watched her sign it, and when they erased her voice, you stayed silent." He closed his eyes. "I thought they'd honor her in other ways. I didn't think they'd cut you out completely." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't think Vera would cut me out? She's been doing that since I was 12. "She's your sister." "No, she's not. Not in anything that matters." Harland looked older than I remembered, grayer, sunken in a way that suggested more than age. Guilt, maybe. "I'll testify," he said at last. "If this goes to court, I'll tell them she signed it and that I was there." "Why now?" I asked. "Because I found the document? Or because you finally can't sleep?" He looked at me then, eyes full of something I couldn't read. "Because you asked, and because I can't lie anymore." There wasn't forgiveness in my silence, but maybe something close to acknowledgement. As I stood to leave, he followed me to the door. "One condition," he said. "If this goes public, keep my name out of it. I don't need people digging." "You don't want people to know you stayed quiet?" He winced. "Just protect my family. My wife doesn't know any of this, and she's sick." I nodded once. "If you stand by what you just said, I'll protect what you care about." I left without another word. The wind outside was sharper now. Or maybe I just noticed it more. Back home, I tossed my keys onto the side table and was halfway through unzipping my jacket when I noticed the envelope on the floor. It had been slid under the door. No stamp, no return address. I opened it. Inside was a single page. Cease and desist. You are hereby instructed to refrain from all defamatory inquiries or insinuations concerning the estate of Lucinda Delmore or the financial inheritance of Vera Delmore. It was signed by Vera's attorneys, the same ones who had stood smiling behind her at the gala, raising glasses like they hadn't just buried someone alive. So that's how she wanted to play it. I folded the letter, placed it on the counter beside the sink, and poured myself a glass of water. I didn't drink it. I just stood there, staring into the glass like I could see the next step waiting. The envelope was plain, no return address, just my name typed neatly in the center like someone wanted it to feel sterile, impersonal. But as soon as I slid the paper out and read the words, "Cease and desist," my throat tightened. It wasn't just a warning, it was a message that said, "You're alone in this, and we're watching." I reread it twice, standing in the entryway with my shoes still on, bag dangling off one shoulder. Each line was legalese, laced with veiled threats, accusations of defamation, unsubstantiated inquiries, and a subtle reminder that Vera had the best lawyers in Napa County, maybe in the whole damn state. I moved to the kitchen and laid the paper on the counter next to the sink. My tea from that morning had gone cold. I poured it out without thinking, the silence of the apartment suddenly louder than anything. Was I going too far? Had I spun a story in my head that wasn't really there? I thought of Harland, of how he looked when he handed me that envelope, as if he'd been waiting years for someone to ask the right question. But now I wondered if I'd dragged him into something that would swallow us both. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing my mother's face in that hospital bed, not in pain, but in absence. Like something vital had already slipped from her days before her last breath. And I'd stayed beside her, held her hand, whispered prayers she couldn't hear. I thought presence meant something, but maybe I was wrong. At dawn, my phone buzzed with a text. "Vera, why are you doing this? You think this will bring her back?" I didn't respond. I deleted the message, then the entire thread. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I deleted the app I'd used to pull the files from Mom's phone, just like that. Gone. The phone sat on the coffee table, dark and lifeless. I stared at it for 10 full minutes before reaching for it, then stopped short. My hand hovered. I stood up instead. By mid-morning, I was digging through drawers, pulling out an old storage bin and tossing everything into it. Flash drives, notes, printouts, even Mom's flip phone. If I kept pushing this, Vera would bury me legally. Emotionally, she already had. I stayed. I whispered aloud, pacing the living room with no one to hear me. That should have mattered. My fingers trembled as I reached for the lid to the box. I was ready to close it, ready to let the whole damn thing go. Then the phone screen blinked. It was off. I'd powered it down myself. And yet now, it pulsed like it had been waiting for this exact moment. I lifted it, staring. The screen flickered once more. Backup folder detected. A single file loaded in. Final Mom Voice AVI. I hesitated. Then tapped play. Her voice came through, raspy but unmistakably her. "Odalyn, if you've come this far, I need you to know. They made me sign it while I was medicated. I wasn't in my right mind. They said it was easier that way." I felt the breath leave my body. She paused on the recording, maybe catching her own exhaustion. Then she went on, slower. I never wanted it to end this way. Not with lawyers, not with Vera smiling like she'd won something. I tried. God knows I tried to make things fair. But I was tired, and they knew it. Silence. Then her voice cracked one last time. "If anyone can carry truth quietly, it's you." That was it. The recording stopped. The screen went black again. But I stayed still, not crying, not shaking, just sitting. Because it was all finally, painfully clear. She'd seen it happening. She hadn't fought loud. She'd fought in whispers, in hidden folders and handwritten letters. It wasn't cowardice. It was desperation, and she trusted me to finish it. I set the phone back down, carefully. Then I reopened the backup folder, downloaded every file, and before I could lose my nerve, I opened a blank email, typed in Harlan's address, attached 3 audio files, and wrote just one sentence in the body of the message: "If I'm the quiet one, let's see what happens when I speak." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even lie down. Instead, I watched the sun climb slowly across the living room wall, hour by hour, as the message sat there in my sent folder, untouched. No reply? Not yet. By 9 a.m., I had called the little Italian place in town, my mother's favorite, the one with the lace curtains and the framed photo of her and the owner from years ago. I made a reservation for 2. "Quiet corner table, please, not near the windows." By 9:10, I'd sent Vera a message. "Odalyn, dinner tonight, just you and me. No lawyers, no drama, just sisters." She didn't reply right away, but by noon 3 dots danced on my screen, then vanished, then reappeared. "Vera, 6:30. Don't make it messy." I could almost hear her tone, clipped, poised, like she was doing me a favor just by showing up. But I wasn't looking for her favor. I was looking for something else entirely. That evening, I arrived early. The hostess knew my name, smiled softly as she led me to the back table near the fireplace. I asked for a pot of chamomile tea. It was the same spot Mom always chose when she came in alone. When Vera walked in 10 minutes later, heads turned, not out of curiosity, but admiration. She still had that polished, untouchable quality. Hair in soft waves, pearl earrings, the kind of confidence that made waiters apologize just for asking questions. She sat down without a word, placed her clutch on the table like it deserved its own seat, and studied me for a beat. "You're early," she said, unfolding her napkin. "I've been ready," I said, keeping my voice even. "We ordered." She chose sea bass. I went with soup and salad. We barely spoke through appetizers. The wine arrived. She drank, I didn't. I wanted a clear head. Dessert came, and with it, my moment. I reached into my coat pocket and set a flash drive on the white tablecloth. It was small, black, unmarked, harmless at first glance, but she froze the second it landed. "That's what Mom left me," I said. "Her voice, her words. You might want to hear what she said about you." Vera didn't move for a long second. Then she laughed. Not loudly, but the kind of sharp, dismissive laugh you give someone you think is beneath you. "You're bluffing," she said, fingers tightening around her fork. "No," I said calmly, "I'm remembering. And I'm done forgetting." She picked up the flash drive like it was a used napkin. "You think this changes anything?" "It does. Clause 17C is still valid. You knew that, didn't you?" Her face twitched. Just a flicker, but it was there. "You don't have the guts to take this public," she said, low. I looked her in the eye, steady. "That's what you counted on, didn't you? That I'd stay quiet, that I'd do what I've always done, sit in the back row, not cause a scene." Vera smiled, slow and icy. "And yet, here we are." Neither of us touched dessert. She left before I did, heels sharp against the tile floor, no goodbye. Later that night, I sat on my living room couch, heart steady but heavy, laptop open in front of me. I didn't need a podium. I needed a post. I logged into the memorial page we'd created after Mom passed. Vera had forgotten all about it, I was sure. It had only a few photos, a few tributes, nothing flashy. I clicked New Post. Title: She always said the quiet ones remember everything. Body: The truth is never loud, but it's permanent. I added a single link to an anonymous drive with redacted files, audio files, signatures, legal memos. Not all of them, just enough. I hit post. Then I shut the laptop and stared at the wall until morning. The call came at 7:02 a.m. No caller ID, but I knew the voice before she even said hello. "You crossed a line," Vera said, cool and sharp. "Don't think you'll like what happens next." The line went dead. but her words stayed. "You crossed a line. Don't think you'll like what happens next." I stood in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear long after the silence came. Outside, birds were waking. Inside, something else was anger, maybe, or something colder. I didn't check my emails until after I'd made coffee. It was still early, too early. But the first thing I saw wasn't an ad or a coupon. It was a forwarded message from HR with the subject line, "Urgent concern regarding online activity." Beneath it, a short sentence from my supervisor, "Let's meet at 11, privately." I scrolled down. Someone had sent a collection of screenshots to my workplace. Old ones, things from years back, notes from a conflict I had with a team member, long resolved, complaints taken out of context, comments twisted. Attached was a blog post from an anonymous source. Odalyn Delmore, the forgotten sister with a dangerous imagination. I almost laughed, almost, but the photos they'd used weren't stock. They were real. One of them was from my mother's funeral, my eyes swollen from crying. I wore no makeup. The caption read, "Unstable? Sources say yes." By 10:30, I was sitting in my manager's office. She looked uncomfortable. She always did when things got personal. "Odalyn," she started, clasping her hands, "we've received a few communications. Unverified, but concerning." I let her speak. Let her fumble through phrases like company image and external behavior standards. I nodded. Stood. "I understand," I said. "You'll want me to take a leave." She didn't answer directly, but her sigh was enough. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just walked out. My car sat in the same parking spot it had for 5 years, under the same brittle maple tree. But something had shifted. Not in the car. In me. By the time I reached home, I already knew Vera's team had planned this. The headlines were too clean, too coordinated. But as I closed the door behind me, a different sound filled the space. My mother's voice, faint, calm, echoed from the phone still charging on the counter. I had hit play without realizing. "They'll try to make you feel small," she said. "But you're not. You never were." She had recorded it just weeks before she passed. Her voice wasn't strong, but it was steady. I sat on the floor with the phone in my hands. This wasn't sadness anymore. It was grief shaped into something sharp. Around 3, I opened my contacts, scrolled down to a name I hadn't touched in years, Caroline Denton. She used to write for the Chronicle, investigative reporter, sharp as nails and twice as fast. She also happened to be one of my mother's oldest friends. I sent a single text. "I have something you need to hear. It's real, and it's bigger than me." She replied within 20 minutes, "Then let's talk, tonight." We met at a bookstore cafe on the edge of town. One of those places where no one asks questions, and the jazz is always a little too loud. Caroline looked older, her hair grayer, but her eyes just as alert. I slid the flash drive across the table. "This is everything," I said. She plugged it into her laptop. No small talk, no pleasantries. Her brows knit as she listened. She didn't speak until the third clip played, the one where Mom mentioned names, lawyers, trustees, and 2 familiar senators from the donor registry. Caroline leaned back slowly. "You realize this doesn't just take down your sister," she said. "It could ruin 5 people in Washington." I looked at her and said only one thing. "Then maybe it's time they all fall together." I didn't flinch when Caroline said it. I just looked at her, really looked. Her eyes weren't challenging me, they were warning me. This doesn't just take down your sister, it could ruin 5 people in Washington. And maybe that should have scared me. Maybe 5 years ago it would have. But not now. Not after all the silence I'd swallowed, all the times I'd stepped aside. My hands didn't shake as I pushed the drive closer to her laptop. "Then let the light ruin them." She nodded once and stood. "I'll need a few hours." By sunset, her team had cut together a tight, quiet video. No flashy graphics, just facts, screenshots, audio. The voiceover wasn't an actor. It was Mom's. Raw, slurred at moments, but unmistakably her. The title? Signed while sedated, inside a billion-dollar inheritance scandal. Caroline clicked publish. And the internet did the rest. It started on niche forums, estate law threads, inheritance justice groups. But by midnight, a dozen local journalists had picked it up. By dawn, the hashtag #Clause17C was trending nationwide. They didn't say my name at first. They called me the younger daughter, or the contested heir. But the voice in the audio wasn't mine. It was hers, Mom's, saying things like, "They made me sign it while I was medicated." I never wanted it to end this way. I watched the shares rise from my living room floor, legs tucked under me, wrapped in the same cardigan I wore to her hospice bed the week she passed. A quiet knock broke the silence around 8 a.m. My attorney, yes, the one I'd quietly retained 2 weeks ago, stood outside with a thermos of coffee and a calm smile. "You ready?" he asked. "For what?" "For the court to know your name." He handed me a printed copy of the petition we were filing, an injunction to freeze all disbursements, and a motion to reopen probate under California Code. His thumb tapped one line. Plaintiff requests review based on newly discovered evidence suggesting undue influence and forgery of capacity. "You're not asking for her money," he said. "You're asking for your mother's real intentions to be honored. That's bigger." I signed. 2 hours later, Vera was on camera. Live, draped in navy, makeup perfect, eyes glistening just enough. "My sister, my half-sister, has always been troubled," she said, pausing so the cameras could catch her pain. "I tried to include her. I tried to care for her. But this is a cruel smear campaign, against me, against our family, against everything my mother built." I didn't watch it alone. Caroline sat beside me on the couch, laptop open on her knees, live streaming every second. "She's good," Caroline muttered. "She's practiced." When the feed cut to commercials, we just sat there. I sipped water. Caroline typed a quick update to her blog. Then the phone buzzed. Not mine. Not Caroline's. The old one. Mom's. It lit up on the corner table, as if summoned by the heat in the air. I walked over and picked it up. No caller, no alert. Just a new folder on the home screen. For her, when the time comes. I tapped it open. Inside was a single audio file, Delmore reading by counsel.wave. It was her lawyer, Mom's original estate attorney. His voice was dry, clipped but unmistakable. "This is a reading of the revised estate directive dated March 23rd, notarized and witnessed. Beneficiary instructions as follows." The document was real, the will was legal, and the voice, his, named me, first and clearly. No confusion, no gray space. Odalyn, only daughter. The silence that had followed me my entire life cracked, slowly and completely. I sat at the kitchen table that night, folder open, papers spread out like wings. Caroline leaned over them, shaking her head. "If you walk into that courtroom with this," she said, "you won't just be a footnote anymore." I closed the folder. "I never wanted to be famous," I said. "Just seen." The next morning, dressed in navy slacks and a blouse I'd worn to job interviews years ago, I walked through the doors of the Napa County Courthouse. The receptionist didn't recognize me. That was fine. I placed the manila envelope on the counter. "I'm here to submit a formal petition to amend Case 1832 RE, Delmore Probate." She blinked. "You're the younger daughter?" "No," I said quietly but firmly. "I'm the only daughter." The courthouse doors didn't make a sound as they closed behind me, but I felt the weight of them anyway. Inside, it smelled faintly of paper and polished tile. No crowds, no cameras, just the echo of my footsteps and the soft crinkle of the file in my hands. By the time I reached the probate clerk's desk, my palms had gone clammy. I tightened my grip. The folder wasn't heavy, but what was inside, it carried the years I had spent invisible. The clerk glanced up. "You're here about the Delmore estate case?" I nodded. "I'm here to submit a formal petition to amend the will on record, and this," I slid the document across, "is the evidence." She opened it without ceremony. A moment later, the judge's assistant emerged and called my name. Inside the hearing room, I was asked to sit. No one else spoke for the first few moments. Then the judge, a lean woman in her 60s, with tired eyes and a no-nonsense tone, asked gently, "You're Odalyn Delmore?" "Yes, Your Honor." "You have audio?" I nodded and handed over the phone, which now felt like a relic. It had carried pain and then proof. Now it was delivering justice. The judge pressed play. The room filled with my mother's voice. I was coerced. My daughters must know the truth. My final will is in the vault. I never revoked it. There was no mistaking her tone, calm, tired, but lucid. The silence that followed was absolute. The judge looked up. "And this will... it's notarized?" "Yes. And witnessed. The witness is willing to appear." She nodded once. "Then I'm ordering a full review under California Probate Code. The stay on disbursements remains effective." My knees nearly buckled when I stood to leave. Outside, I didn't go straight home. I sat in the car, engine off, staring at the courthouse steps. The story broke before I could even check my phone. News alerts lit up the screen like sparks on dry grass. New evidence emerges in billion-dollar estate battle. Final will of Genevieve Delmore may have been overlooked. By the time I got back to my apartment, Vera had pulled out of her planned media interview. Her publicist issued a vague no comment and quit later that evening. I refused all requests. I wasn't interested in becoming a public figure. I didn't need a spotlight. I'd lived too long in someone else's shadow to chase one now. Then came the message. Just 2 words. "Come alone." There was no signature, but I knew who it was from. That evening I drove to the vineyard. The vines were dormant. The air carried a chill even though the sun hadn't quite set. I found her near the edge of the property, where the land dipped and the view stretched for miles. Vera stood with her arms crossed. She didn't smile. Her eyes were cold but tired. "So," she said, "the quiet girl finally screamed." "I didn't scream," I said. "I just stopped whispering." She scoffed. "You always had the softest voice, but now the world listens to you?" I stepped closer, but not too close. "They're not listening to me, they're listening to her. You silenced her. I just pressed play." That landed. Vera's jaw clenched. Her fingers twitched slightly, like she wanted to slap something but knew it wouldn't help now. I was supposed to be the one she trusted. "You were the one who had access. There's a difference." We didn't fight. We didn't yell. We just stood there, surrounded by vines planted by a woman neither of us fully understood until she was gone. Vera looked away first. "You think this changes anything?" "No, I think it reveals everything." She didn't follow me when I left. Back home, I placed the old flip phone in a small wooden box. Nothing fancy, just something clean and simple. I set it on a shelf beside a photograph of Mom in her gardening hat, dirt on her cheek, laughing. The next morning, I walked 2 blocks to the newly painted building that once housed a rundown cafe. Now, the windows bore the name, the Genevieve Delmore Center for Family Legal Aid. Inside, a small staff shuffled between desks. Flyers hung on bulletin boards. A handwritten note sat on the front counter. She never asked, she never took, but she never left. Caroline met me in the hallway, holding 2 mugs of tea. No press, no cameras. Just the quiet hum of a purpose finally set into motion. I walked into the back room, placed the box with the phone on a shelf above a row of law books, and exhaled. She never asked, she never took, but she never left. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the quiet one. I felt seen.